Hello and welcome back to the Chasing Cars Garage, and it's time finally for some more Hyundai i20N long-term content. Now don't worry, we haven't been resting on our laurels, we've been driving this car an awful lot. In fact, it's actually got 12,500 kilometers on the odometer as we record this video right now. What happened was, and some of you may have caught it, probably about 3,500 of you by the viewing numbers, I actually put the wrong oil in this car and we made a video about the oil change. Today, we're gonna right those wrongs. I'm gonna tell you exactly how I made that error and why it's no good to have made that error, and we're gonna change the oil and walk you through the procedure. Of course, this isn't an instructional video, but it is a simple DIY home job that you can do. If you're not comfortable with anything that you see in this video in terms of taking it on yourself, then it's obviously going to be a little bit better to take your car to your local Hyundai dealership. They should be pretty obliging in doing an oil change between normal service intervals, and it's a great thing to do if you regularly track your car, drive it hard, or you take shorter trips regularly. So let's get into the video, and of course I'd love to hear your thoughts on changing your own oil in the comment section down below. What happened with Oilgate? How exactly did I choose the wrong oil? Well, it was quite early on in the i20N's lifespan in Australia. There hadn't been that many customer cars delivered, and although the newer GF6 oil standard has been around since 2019, here in Australia things can take a little bit longer to land in your regular retail shops, and that's where I tripped up. I just went to a normal auto parts shop and bought a 0W20 oil, and although it says right here in the owner's manual exactly the amount and the type of oil that you need to put in, I bought the previous GF5 standard. Now Hyundai does recommend Shell Helix oil, but we weren't able to buy oil directly from the Hyundai dealership, and I couldn't find any Shell 0W20 oil in the local parts shops around us here in Sydney City. So in short notice, what I managed to do is grab some Mobil 1 Super 3000. There are some important numbers on here. Obviously 0W20, that's pretty standard, although you ask some people and they'll tell you that this is going to be wrong for a car like this, but take your own risks if you divert from the manufacturer's specifications, as we've learned. Now below that is the one that tripped me up. API SP or ILSAC GF6A. I got GF5, we've now got GF6A in Mobil 1 Super 3000. Of course, we're not sponsored by anyone here at Chasing Cars, not sponsored by Castrol or Shell or Mobil 1 at all, or even Hyundai or anything. We're completely independent from all that stuff, so we're just using what's available to us in a fairly short order of time here in Sydney. We've also got a Hyundai genuine oil filter because it's always best to use genuine where you can. All right, we've got one side of the car jacked up. We only really need to get the front right off the ground just to give us a little bit more access to the oil filter plug, and then we'll have to drop the car down so we get every last drop out. But let's get into that right now. I think we can all agree that working on your car is not a particularly glamorous thing to do, but it isn't too difficult. Just under here, we've got a little 18mm socket, which I'm gonna loosen off now, gently, because we do not want to round the oil filter thing off. We've got our little drain thing, and let's hope it falls in the right hole and we don't lose the bolt in the hot oil, because that sucks. There we go. Whoa. Now, if you don't have aim as good as me, you'll need a lot of rags, but I actually managed to nail it. It's all gone straight in the bucket. So we'll let that drain out for a minute, just let it sit quietly and patiently until most of it's done, and then we'll pop the oil filter out, drop the car down a little bit so it's nice and flat so we can get the rest of the nuggets of oil out there, and then we'll put all the plugs back in and fill it back up. Now, being a paper filter, it's actually quite easy to bust this one open, and after a quick look, I'm going to wash my hands after this as well, there don't appear to be any metal shavings in here, which is a good sign, because the last time we changed the oil, there was a little bit of an element of sparkliness to the oil and to the filter as well, but so far, so good. Fresh filter, you get all your fresh bits, including a new crush washer, which you really need to use. And then of course, the little oil filter itself. Super simple, bang it in there, other way around, you goon. So it's got that little locator pin. Get your new locator pin from your little plastic bag, goes into this little guy. Pop, done, easy. Ready to go back in, after you change the O-ring of course, which I almost forgot. Old sump plug should be fine for this time. New washer on there. Let's stick it back in the drain hole. And like, it almost goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it. Put it in with your fingers first and be very careful, because you really don't want to cross thread your sump or your sump plug, because that's just a bad time for everyone, especially if it's your only car. So just be nice and gentle until you find the thread. There we go. Swap over to a nice socket and then finish it off with a torque wrench. The owner's manual calls for 4.8 litres of oil in the i20N, but of course, as logic and carefulness always goes, don't go chucking 4.8 litres in straight off the bat, top it up fairly slowly and check the dipstick all times and make sure you're on a level surface if you have the privilege of being on one, as we do. That's it. I once again smell like oil and the i20N is now full of 0W20 GF6A fresh motor oil, and that's always a good thing. How is it tracking after its third oil change in its time with us? Well, it's pretty good. Compared to the first change we did, there were no evident metal shavings, no sparkliness in the oil, and there didn't seem to be any chunks that came out. We even opened up the oil filter that was used for the last couple of thousand Ks, and it doesn't seem to be any evidence of any solid particles. It's just that the oil was a little brown and murky, but that's to be expected from oil as it ages and picks up the extra stuff that's sitting around the engine. So I think we can pretty much give it a clean bill of health. Of course, I'd love to hear from you guys, whether anyone you know or your i20N is suffering or ongoing suffering from shavings in the oil, or if it's been fine like ours seems to have been, and whether or not you're using the recommended 0W20 oil or something else for Australia's hotter climate. Let me know in the comments section down below. And one thing's for certain, we have plenty more i20N content coming now. This has been a little bit of a bottleneck, but over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be some track day stuff, some road trip stuff, and of course, the final wrap up, whether or not we loved living with the i20N for 6 months and a little over 10,000 Ks. So make sure you're subscribed down below. And of course, thank you very much for watching Chasing Cars.